Hey, Rob.
What's up, Mike?
Hey, buddy.
We got another good show today. This
Oh,
is
yeah.
Rockshow 76, and what's the topic of the day? Who do you got for us this week?
Okay, we are talking about the famous Peter Tosh. Okay, the late great Peter Tosh passed away in 1986. Uh,
You know what's funny? He passed away September 11th.
yes, he did.
Do you
I
see that? But it was like
yes,
in 1987.
right, right. Well, I mean, September 11th is also Ethiopian New Year.
Oh wow!
Yeah, very strange. Uh, Peter got his start in the Wailers.
Yes.
He played with Bob Marley on the first two albums and the Wailing Wailers even before that. And he had an amazing career, short career, unfortunately, it was cut short.
Yeah.
And he was always kind of a little bit in the shadow of Bob Marley, but he definitely has amazing reggae music. If Marley was number one in the world, he was number two for a while.
Like but he was there in the beginning with Marty, right? When he first started and everything. Like he's like one of the pioneers of that
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
right?
When like Bunny and Peter and Bob was still living in Frenchtown in the early '60s, they had put together the band. I'll get into that a little bit.
You know
Uh,
what? It's funny that you're saying that. And today, I think you're the one that put an article on Facebook that bunnies are missing.
yeah, yeah. Coincidentally, today is we record the shows early, so we're still in May.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bunny, Bunny's wife, she just disappeared in Jamaica, and
Wow.
she's about 70 years old. I think she may have dementia. So let's hope by the time this show airs, they find her.
All right. So let me ask you a question about him. What was his real name? You got his real name, right?
Yeah, his real name was Winston Hubert McIntosh.
And he was born that when he was born in Jamaica. Was that a poor neighborhood?
Well, he was
That
born. He was born in the Westmoreland Parish in 1944. It's kind of like the southwestern kind of section of the island. Uh, in those days, all of Jamaica was poor. Okay, pretty much, unless you were white. but but he was the main city that was kind of near him was Negril. Okay, so he wasn't on the Kingston side of the island. He was on the Negril side of the island. But he would have a troubled childhood. His parents would abandon him as a child, and he kind of bounced around between relatives for the first 15 years of his life. But when he was 15, his aunt died, and he ended up in Trenchtown, okay, near,
wow.
near Kingston. Um, he was always into music, Rob, okay? But his poverty and the way he was brought up, his aunt, when she was still alive, was very religious. He kind of pursued music when he could. There was stories that he once built a guitar on a sardine can, a giant sardine can. Okay, uh, but he never had any formal musical training. But he did know how to play guitar and he did know how to play piano. He learned
Did
it on.
he learn that himself, or was
Yeah,
he
yeah.
self-teach?
He was self-taught. He learned it on his own. One thing that he could do from a kid, from a young age, is he could watch somebody, specifically play guitar, and just watch somebody for a few hours how they do it, and just pick up on it real quick. And that's how he taught himself guitar. There's a story one time where he was watching a guy for a couple hours play like a couple of songs, and then he just took the guitar and started playing it exactly the way the guy did. He said, the guy said,
Wow.
"Who taught you how to play?" He said, "You just did."
Oh wow.
Yeah. So he had that knack. Some people have that.
So he's a good cloner. He can copy somebody's habits.
Yeah. Right.
That's pretty much what it is. You see
Yeah.
somebody what they do, and then you can copy. It's pretty much like a cloning.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched people play guitar, all night, and I can't do that. I just, I can't remember where to put the fingers. You know.
So let me ask you a question. So he started teaching himself. He started doing all this stuff. Was his first band was with Bob Marley, or who did he start with?
Well, yeah, the Wailing Wailers was something he would put together with Bob and Bunny Livingston, who became Bunny Wailer. Um, right around the time when he was in Trenchtown, he would meet a guy named Joe Higgs.
Yeah.
Joe Higgs was part of an R&B group called Higgs and Wilson,
Yep.
and they were, Higgs and Wilson were great singers, great harmonizers, and he taught Tosh how to play a little bit. It was around this time that he would shorten his name. He would take the name Peter Tosh,
Yeah.
short for Macintosh.
Yeah,
But
that's a weird name. How did he get
Macintosh,
that name, Macintosh? Like a Macintosh computer.
or a Macintosh Apple.
Yeah.
Yeah, he would meet the young Bob Marley and the young Bunny Livingston, Bunny Wailer. Okay, and they would put together the Wailing Wailers. Uh, and they had these great harmony skills. In 1964, they would join up with Junior Braithwaite. He was a falsetto singer, and then two backup singers, Beverly Kelso and Cherry Smith, and that group would be the Wailing Wailers. So yes, that was the first group that he had.
Wow. So he meet these guys, they get together, and Bob Marley was already part of this, right? Because that was pretty much his backup group, right?
Yeah. Well, no, they weren't. It wasn't a backup group. It wasn't Bob Marley and the Wailers. It was
So
just
they just called the waiter with the
well,
waiters,
they were
right?
called the Wailing Wailers. Okay,
Okay.
and it was a different kind of music. They were playing like a ska kind of music.
Yeah, because it wasn't reggae right off the
No,
back. It was a
no,
lot
it
of
wasn't.
ska. They even called it like rock steady and R&B and reggae.
Well, first came ska, then came
Yeah.
rock steady by the mid '60s, and you had that for a couple of years, and then that would morph into reggae. But Bob and Bunny and Peter would be at the forefront of all that stuff. The thing was Peter could play guitar and keyboards, like I said, but the
Yeah.
other guys couldn't play any instruments, and they were inspired by him. And Peter actually taught Bob how to play guitar. He had some knowledge of it, but he taught him how. And
Wow.
yeah, and they would find themselves with a hit with the song "Simmer Down."
Yep.
Okay, and shout out to Boogie. He was playing that in the park a couple weeks ago. I heard him playing that, and 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 they would have a few more hit singles. They would be very popular in Jamaica, and by 1965, Braithwaite, Kelso, and Smith would leave the band, and it would just be left with Marley and Bunny Wailer and Peter Tosh. Now, this was kind of like, if you remember the Bob Marley show we did, this was kind of like a breakup period, because Marley
Yeah.
would move to Delaware to be with his mom, who recently moved there. And he would kind of like, right before he left, he had married Rita, and he was getting interested in the Rastafari faith.
Yeah.
So were Peter and Bunny. Okay, the three of them had become Rastas, or were on the brink of it, pretty much. And when Marley came back in 1967, a year later, okay, he would be, he would have his dreads and growing his dreads, and he would be a Rasta. And Peter and Bunny were waiting for him, and they had spoken during that time, and they had realized they would all just be Rastafari. Um, the band would get back together under a new name. It was called the Wailers.
Yes.
Got rid of the wailing part, just the Wailers.
Yep.
They were no longer interested in doing ska music. That was kind of old hat. What they did is they took kind of like that rock steady beat that was popular at the time and slowed it down just a bit.
What is like a rock steady beat? How do you explain that? Like if
Oh God, I don't. I'd have to give examples of songs which you might not know, but
okay.
it was kind of a lot of the songs were like love songs, boy and girl love songs,
Okay.
and it kind of was meant for kind of like sexy dancing, grinding a little bit, and like it wasn't dirty, but it was kind of like a little suggestive.
So
And
it's getting into reggae.
yeah, well, I mean, reggae is actually a slower beat. Okay,
Yeah.
reggae is based on your heartbeat. it is actually just a few beats faster than your heartbeat per minute. Okay, that chugga 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 reggae beat. Okay, what is if you time it, it's actually a few beats faster than your heart, and some people say that's why people like it. It has an effect.
So let me tell you, at this time, when they start to get like a little bit more political and more religious with their music.
Well, because of the Rastafari faith, yes, they definitely were more spiritual. What they were doing was they were creating this sound, and the lyrics that were written were socially conscious kind of lyrics, talking about Black history and slavery,
Wow.
sometimes in particular, colonialism. Living under the British, or they talked about living life in poverty, okay, which is what they knew. And
Yeah.
it wasn't it wasn't love songs. It was serious shit. And
Yeah. So
it was a different thing. It was something different. It was controversial at the time.
wow.
The Jamaican government had only, you know, really broken away for about maybe 7 or 8 years at that point from England. There was still a lot of like leftover ways of doing things in the past. There was still systemic racism, and stuff like that. So you had a movement, the Rastas, okay, and also a sound to back it up. It was controversial.
So what can you tell me about a guy named Johnny Nash? And then there was a
Johnny Nash. Okay. You might know the song "I Can See Clearly Now."
oh yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
I can see clearly now. The rain has gone. Right.
yeah,
And that was a big hit for him. And he was, the Wailers, and Bob Marley in particular, would be involved with Johnny Nash to try to write some music for him.
wow.
There was a moment there where he was getting really big, and selling a lot outside of Jamaica and Europe. He was, I Can See Clearly Now was a big hit in the U.S. I believe there was a
He's
movie that he was
yeah,
supposed to be in.
hugely. Oh
What's that?
yeah,
What's that?
yeah. Was it a movie?
There was a movie he was supposed to be in, and Bob and the guys were gonna score some of the movie, but it bombed. It didn't do well.
Wow.
Yeah, but when Bob came back in '67, for the next few years they recorded a lot, and they
Yeah.
recorded with a lot of different producers. By '70, they had recorded like early versions of Soul Rebel, Duppy Conqueror, and Small Axe.
Was that producer Lee Perry?
Lee Scratch Perry, exactly. Yeah. They had some additional musicians. They had a bass player named Aston Barrett. His nickname was Family Man, and
Yep.
then his brother was the drummer Carlton Barrett. They were working on, at that point in '71. There was it was called the Best of the Wailers. Now it's a little confusing. The Best of the Wailers is not a greatest hits. It's not a
No.
compilation of the stuff they had before. It was a new album, and they just called it the Best of the Wailers. But it had tracks written by Peter, okay, and tracks written by Bob. Some of them they shared
Yeah.
the writing credits. And it was basically at this point that Island Records, particularly Chris Blackwell, who was in charge of the label, decided
Yeah.
to sign them to a deal, and it would be their first album would come out in '72 called Catch a Fire. All right, and Tosh had written most of the tracks of the Best of the Wailers LP, but
Wow.
only two tracks on Catch a Fire, and it was 400 Years and Stop That Train. Bob had written pretty much the rest of everything. Um, by '70 and '72, they had recorded with several producers, and sometimes the rehearsal sessions would even be recorded, and Tosh would release some songs in the UK under a different name. He used the name Peter Tosh.
Yeah. What was that? What? Because he was because of the contract reason or anything? Was that why?
You know, I think that he might have been a little upset about maybe only two songs of his being used on the, 1st album. Okay, the Catch a Fire album. Uh, all through the first two albums, which is Catch a Fire and Burnin', uh, there was a growing problem in the band, and that was that Peter felt Bob was too much of the center of attention, and that they were a band, and he was, an equal writer in the band and a contributor, and he wanted his stuff to be performed. He didn't care if Bob sang, but he wrote the songs. Some of the
But he
songs.
wanted to. He wanted to hear the song. It's almost like George Harris kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he was the quiet wailer, like Harrison was the quiet Beatle, but he really wasn't quiet, okay, because he spoke out, and when Catch a Fire came out in '72, it was very well received. By '73, they would come out with the Burnin' album,
Yeah.
and he had these problems within the group, but also tragedy would strike him because he would be in a car accident with his girlfriend. He had a girlfriend named Yvonne, and he was driving her home one night in Jamaica, and somebody was on the wrong side of the road and crashed into them. And Peter suffered a fractured skull, but Yvonne died instantly.
Wow.
Yeah, tragic accident. And at the same time, not too long after that, Chris Blackwell, who Tosh was trying to get him to release a solo album of his, okay, refused to do it. And him and Chris Blackwell didn't get along. He, instead of calling him Blackwell, he called him White Worst. He used to call him Chris Whitewurst.
Wow.
Yeah, but Bunny at the time was having problems too in the band because he didn't like the fact that they were going back and forth to the UK so much, because the UK was where they were really kind of taking off. He didn't like the cold climate. He also didn't like touring in general, even though they would go to the United States. He didn't like it. He didn't like the Temptations on the road, being a strict Rastafari. It was just like he didn't like what he was seeing. I guess sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of stuff.
Yeah, really dark stuff. And when you're away from your family
Yeah.
that long, it takes a toll on you too.
Yeah, I mean these guys were country guys. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So it was a big shock for them. It seemed like Peter took it well as far as that,
Yeah.
but it was just a matter of like he felt his songs weren't being used in the band. Bob was a little too much of the center of the attention. So remember, Tosh wrote on the Burnin' album. He wrote "Get Up, Stand Up." That's a really
Yeah.
good song. He wrote that song. Okay, but Bob got all the attention. So him and Whaler would move on in 1974. He would leave the group. Later that year, Bob Marley would release Natty Dread, and that would
Another album. Yeah.
yeah, great album, and that would be his first album with like a new Whalers lineup.
So that was a toy. No Taj, no Bunny. This was just a whole new, different lineup.
Exactly, and he called it Bob Marley and the Whalers. That was the
Yeah.
first time that
Okay.
was used.
All right. That
But
makes sense.
yeah, but like over the next like year and a half or so, Peter would release his first. He'd be working on his solo album.
Yeah. Let me ask you. Let me ask you about that. Well, how does was for him to order get his solo career? Was it hard for him? Did he get like what's the roadblock just because he came from Bob Marley and the Waiters, or he came from the Waiters? Was that like was that something that held him back?
I don't think. No. I think if anything, it helped him.
It
Okay.
helped him. Okay.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it was. Bob and Peter. I think they always had at least a cordial, somewhat close relationship, even after the breakup. It was never a feud. It wasn't ugly. Okay, from what I've read. I mean, I think things were said over the years. There was some differences and stuff, but I think in the end, I think Bob and Peter they were good friends. They loved each other.
So there was like no bad blood after everybody went their own separate
nothing
way.
nothing that would prevent them from talking or anything like that. They did their own separate things afterwards. They didn't have a lot to do with each other musically. There was some shows they played together. I'll get into that. But there wasn't this big dirty rivalry like some people like to think.
Yeah, because I always thought maybe once you leave a band, there's always like some hard feeling and everybody's shitting on each other after it.
I think a lot of times there is, but you're talking about deeply spiritual people, and they can get past that usually. I would think Rastas don't hold grudges too much.
All right, that's
You know?
good to know.
Yeah, yeah.
So let's move on. And what did he do for his solo career? What you got for me about his solo
Okay,
career?
well
So
that would be the classic "Legalize It" album. Okay, that came
okay,
out in '76. He was still affiliated with Island Records, but CBS Records had signed him as well, and he recorded the album in Kingston, Jamaica. And
okay,
I mean, the title track, as soon as the album came out, the title track was instantly banned in Jamaica. Okay,
wow,
and I mean the same day you couldn't hear it anywhere on the island. But what it seemed to do was, as it more people heard it, even if it was underground, he just got more and more popular. Okay, and it just seemed to take off in other parts of the world. There's a couple other outstanding tracks on there called Burial, and that was co-written with Bunny Wailer. A song called What You Gonna Do, that's one of my favorites.
yep,
Song called Why Must I Cry, which was written with Bob Marley. That was an older song. And then there was an Ethiopian titled song called Exia Beha, which means let Jah be praised in Ethiopian.
wow.
The album would get released in the United States in June, and it would peak at number 199 in the top 200. And it did a lot better in Jamaica, I could tell you that. The album sold, even though you couldn't hear it, the album sold a lot. Um, Now you got to talk about the album cover. You've seen that album cover, right?
Is that the one with the stepping razor?
No, no. Step and Razor would come out later on. The album cover for Legalize It is him sitting in a big field of marijuana.
Oh my God, yes, that's like a legendary
Yeah,
cover. You know what?
legendary. Yep.
You want to hear something? They used to have there was oh man, like Record USA or Virgin Record, they had a big poster of him just with that cover.
It's iconic. I mean,
Because it was like I remember that cover. Yeah. Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah. That shit bring it back. So they might even have that same cover. That thing might have been in one of the Tower Record on 70 something Broadway.
It might have been. It might have been. I don't recall, but definitely could have been. I mean, that's a famous album cover. Now
You
it
ever
was.
been to the Tower Record on Broadway? There used to be one
I
like on
do
six,
remember that. Yeah,
and they had a big. They had that like a big giant thing with him.
a big size of it, right?
Yeah,
That's cool. You got to
right in
wonder
the
what
middle of
happened
the
to all
fucking
those giant.
store.
Yeah, right. You got to wonder what happened to some of those. Somebody's
Ooh.
got them in their house, But that picture of Tosh was photographed by Lee Jaffe.
Hold
Okay,
on,
Lee
Mike. Hold
Jaffe
on.
had photographed. Oh, okay.
Okay. I thought I was losing you. That's what happened.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
you're
got me.
all
All
right.
right. All right. Now that photograph was done by Lee Jaffe, and Lee Jaffe was also a friend of Bob Marley's, who he photographed him as well. Jaffe was also responsible for getting Tosh's band together. Okay, and his band had a name. It was called Word, Sound, and Power.
What was that the name of it? That's like a symbolic, right?
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. You hit the nail on the head. I mean, he was using symbolism and stuff. Okay, the word, the sound, and the power. Now he had two great musicians in that band. It was there was probably about 15 people in the band, but he had Sly Dunbar, okay, and Robbie Shakespeare, and they would eventually. Sly plays drums and Robbie plays bass. Eventually, they would be members of Black Uru, okay, as well, and a million other bands and a million other compilations, and they've done so many things in the reggae world. Sly and Robbie, it's like you pick up any kind of reggae from the '70s and the '80s, and even a little bit in the '90s, it's got their name on it. They were involved with everything.
Let me let me ask you another
Um,
question. Was
Go ahead.
there a problem when since he was also with CBS and Island Record? Was there never any kind of problem with that?
No, I think they used each other for distribution purposes. I think he might have been under contract with
Okay.
Island, to record, but then CBS would distribute. Island for a while, I think, was a subsidiary of
Okay.
Virgin eventually. Okay, but they, a lot of those companies, they all work together when it comes to like distributing worldwide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, it was at this point in around 1977, on the on the popularity of Legalize It, that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards got interested from the Rolling Stones. They had started their own label called Rolling Stones Records, and they were looking to sign some people. Uh, this act would be the only reggae act they would ever sign, but they would sign to Peter Tosh in '77, and he would release his second solo album called
Okay.
Equal Rights
Okay.
on that
Yep.
label. All right, and on that album, he would record his version of Get Up, Stand Up. The title track's a classic, Equal Rights. Down Presser Man, a song called Jog Guide, and the song Step and Razor.
Yeah, Step and
Okay.
Razor, that's a big one.
Yeah, and that, Step and Razor was a cover, right?
Yeah, from who was the cover from? I didn't.
His old buddy Joe Higgs. Okay, from when he was a kid, taught him how to sing a little bit. Joe Higgs, from Trenchtown. And that was like, it's totally different. It's more of like a R&B type song, early on, but then he made it a reggae song. That album would do really well, and it would, being on the Stones label, it gave him a lot of prestige in the business. Step and Razor would also be on the movie Rockers soundtrack,
Yep.
and that's one of the best films ever about reggae, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's how I got the name Rocker Mike.
Oh yeah. That's fucking funny. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
definitely a movie. If you've never seen it, definitely. Will you say it's definitely a good movie to check out if you got time?
yeah. Yeah, I believe Amazon Prime has it. You can watch it for free. It's a great flick. I've watched it a few times on
How long
Amazon.
you think it is? About 90 minutes, probably.
Man, it's like a 90-minute movie, maybe an hour and 40 tops, and it's just about this character. His name is Horsemouth, and he's trying to make a business of delivering reggae albums, and then there's other stuff that happens. There's a lot of famous musicians in the movie. Jacob Miller, um, a lot of great music in the film. Okay, and I love that movie. I can watch it anytime.
Wow.
Um, yeah. Now, when the Stones signed him, okay, they signed him and he recorded that album, and then in the next year, in '78, he would record another album for that label called Bush Doctor. And it was on this one that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards decided to contribute a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, because they would do the lead single was a Temptation
Don't
song
look back.
called "Don't Look Back," right? Old Temptation song, and Tosh and Jagger did it like a duet. Very cool song. Very cool song. Keith Richards would play guitar on the title track, okay, Bush Doctor, and a song called Stand Firm, which was another pretty big hit. Pick Myself Up, that's one of my personal favorites on that album. I think that was I think Tonight I was the lumped up song of the night.
Yeah.
And in April of '78, Peter Tosh was invited to perform at the One Love Peace concert. Now, this was the show that featured Bob Marley, and it was the concert that he put on immediately after coming back from being out of Jamaica for a couple of years because the time he got shot.
Yeah.
And then he kind of went to England and he did the Exodus album and stuff. When he came back, this was something that the government had asked him to do, and because they were still having a lot of violence in the streets, a lot of problems between the supporters of the two political parties that were running for office, and it was a show of peace to try to have this concert.
Yeah. The One
So
Love Peace concert.
One Love Peace, right? And you know, Tasha's performance, okay, would be classic because what he would do is he would go on stage with his band and he lit up a joint and he went on a speech, right, and he was standing right in front of Michael Manley and Edward Seaga, who were, they were both vying for power as prime minister.
Yeah.
Okay. And he got right in front of them and just chastised them for not making marijuana legal. Okay. See, what you got to realize is in Jamaica in those days, it was illegal to have it, to smoke it, right? To possess it, whatever, to grow it. It was totally illegal. But Rastafari, pot being part of the religion in a sense, okay, it was used as a way to just lock these people up. Okay. So, Rastas would get locked up for one joint, a
Wow.
half a joint. Okay. And getting locked up in Jamaica is no joke. There's a jail called General Penitentiary, and it's hell. It's like a hole. It's total hell.
So let me ask you a
So
question. He's in the performance. He's at this con, and he lit a spliff.
right, he lights up a spliff. Everything stops. Okay, and he just starts making this speech, and you could actually listen to it on YouTube. It's about 7 minutes long.
Wow.
Okay, about how the politics, and he was a character because he had a way of speaking. He always twisted the language around. Like instead of saying politics, he would say politricks.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And he, instead of saying system, like the political system,
Yeah.
he would say the political shitstem. Okay. So he would change the words around to make his point, and he was very good at that.
He sounds like me. I change the words around all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, it's all that marijuana, man.
Let me ask you, Mike. After that, did they make him pay for that? Like, did they ever get him and punish him for that thing?
Well, yeah. A few months later, he was in Kingston at a place called Skateland Dance Hall, and he would be brought in by police. I think it was over one joint.
Oh shit!
Okay, and they beat the fuck out of him in the place. He got beat up pretty bad, supposedly. This would happen. This would happen a lot to Rastas for many years. It's only in the last, like, maybe I want to say 10, 15 years that Rastas have had, a lot of respect given to them in Jamaica. Like some of them some of them are in office now and stuff like that. And but for many years they were beaten by police and made to disappear and all kinds of shit.
So where we on at this point? What's he's doing at this point, Tosh? After he got beaten
by 79, he would be working on the Mystic Man album, and that would come out that year.
Yeah.
He's still with the Rolling Stones label, and that album was a little bit more of a spiritual album, I think you could say. Like the album cover kind of had a profile of him with his hands together in prayer. And, there was a track called Just Say No, a track called Rumors of War, which is a biblical phrase, Rumors of War. Those were the two kind of outstanding songs, at least that I liked. It was at this point that he kind of was portraying himself as a healer or a prophet. He had success in the reggae genre at this point, but he was keeping his militant views in the process.
Okay.
But what he would find is he could never achieve that level of his friend Bob Marley. Okay, never could quite get that big. I think that in those days, and it might even be true now, though it might be a little bit different, but I think in those days there was kind of a conscious effort of the powers that be to hold back reggae music in general. Bob was something he was too big to hold back.
Yeah, they couldn't do nothing, but they could. If
No.
you weren't as famous as him and not well known, they could hold you back.
Yeah, I mean, they probably just allowed the one guy, but you couldn't have a whole group of them. That was too threatening. It was, there was a problem with it. I mean, not just the smoking weed part. It was what they were talking about. Okay, they were talking about real freedom. They were talking about spirituality. okay, in a way that the West didn't promote. Okay, when you talk about Rastafari, it's not based really on any Western kind of theology.
No.
It's not Roman Catholicism. It's not. Okay, there's no pope. There's no church. Okay, it's within yourself to find that spirituality. Find it within yourself, not by a priest telling you to go to confession on Saturday. That kind of thing. So it was a threat. Now it's many years later. People are different. They're more open minded, but then it was a threat.
Yeah.
So, I think that there was a conscious effort within to use his words, the shitstem, okay, to try to hold back these people. And Tosh was militant. Bob and him were different. Okay. Don't get me wrong, Bob was militant. He had his militant songs, but he also had his love
Yeah, of
songs.
course.
And he also had his spiritual songs that were really just kind of like, quoting from the Bible or kind of putting it into a different context than the way Peter Tosh would write. Okay. Tosh was, if Bob Marley was kind of like the spirituality of reggae or spirituality of Rastafari religion, Tosh was like the sword or the conscience of it. He was way more militant, different kind of writing, different kind of
You know
lyrics.
what's funny? This is almost like Dr. King and Malcolm X.
Good point. I never thought of that.
You know what?
Yeah, yeah,
One guy was like, "Yo, this and that," and the other guy was like, "Nah, we got to do this."
yeah. I mean, if Marley would be King, and Tosh would be Malcolm X.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
That's kind of very good. Very good analogy, Mr. Rossi.
Thank you, Rockabike. So let me ask you a question. So this guy was the first, but technically, this guy actually he signed up with a pretty good record label. He had the Rolling Stone back here. He was still being held back.
Well, he it was just a matter of sales. I don't think that the Stones didn't do enough to help him, though he would accuse them of that. Okay, he even opened for them a few times.
Yeah.
Okay, and there's a great story that my buddy Rick Rivets had told me one time a few years ago. He said Tosh was supposed to play my father's place, which was a club in Roslyn, Long Island,
Wow.
and there was rumors all day that Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were going to show up. Okay, and the place got packed, and Tosh played, but Jagger never showed up.
Wow.
None of them showed up. Neither one of them did. But so he had gotten to see him there, which was cool because that was a spot that he used to hang out.
But he was
In 80,
also in the video waiting for a friend.
yeah, he was in that video. I'm gonna get into this now. Let me kind of give a little backstory here.
Okay.
In '81, he would come out with the Wanted, Dread, and Alive album, and again, that was on the Rolling Stones record label.
Yeah.
It had the classic song "Coming in Hot." You know that song,
I love that song.
right? His son, Tosh's son, just re-recorded it
I
a
always
couple
say
of
that.
years ago.
Coming in hot. I'm coming in hot.
Yep. And he had a duet with singer Gwen Guthrie, a song called "Nothing But Love" that was a hit, and the title track "Wanted, Dread, and Alive," and a song called "Rastafari Is," are both standouts. I love both of those. Now, EMI and Rolling Stone Records would release both of these of different versions, sort of the same album. There was a few track differences, but he was in the process of I think breaking away from Rolling Stones records. Rolling Stones records didn't really do that well, okay, for its existence. I'm not really sure why. It was something that I think maybe they just didn't have their heart in to do, sign a lot of bands and make it a big label. They were kind of affiliated with EMI too at that point with distributing. So there would be kind of two versions of this album that would be out with like one or two track differences, which is kind of weird, but it sold well. But like I was just saying, by the early '80s, Tosh and Jagger and Richards kind of began to have a falling out with each other. All right, Tosh and I think he felt the Stones label didn't do enough, and at one point, even Keith Richards had let Tosh stay at his Jamaican house
Wow.
because he still has a house, the same house in Jamaica. But he let him stay there for a while, and Tosh brought a bunch of his friends, and I think it was I don't think that was part of the deal, but and when Richards got back from touring, Tosh didn't want to leave.
Oh, is that where they had the infamous fight?
Well, yeah, I mean they had a fight, and it depends on who you believe, but one side said each side say the other one drew a gun on the other one. Okay, so I don't know. I've heard the story that Richards got so angry he pulled a gun on him and said, "Get the fuck out." Okay, and he did finally. And then I've heard from the other side saying that Tosh drew a gun too. So I don't know what's true, but that was the end of their
That's
partnership.
done. It's over.
But he would make his final appearance with the Stones in the video "Waiting on a Friend," which we all know was shot on St. Mark's
Yep.
between First and A, right there in front of the physical graffiti building. Okay, so it's classic. He's kind of one of the rosters that's sitting on the stoop when Jag is sitting there singing. It's a cool video.
It's a very cool video.
Oh yeah, it's classic. In '83, he would bring a new album out called Mama Africa, and you'd have the title track, which was great. A track called Glass House, which I love. His version of Johnny Be Good, the Chuck Berry song.
Yep.
A song called Where You Gonna Run, a song called Peace Treaty. This would be totally on EMI Records, this album. Okay. And he was selling records, but he would decide to go on a little bit of a hiatus at this point. Uh, I've heard that he had an ulcer, okay, and he wasn't feeling well, and he was looking to kind of like restructure his life. So he actually went to Africa.
Wow.
Yeah, and he looked up medicine men, traditional medicine men, and he was there for a while and healing himself. And he also, had told his friends that he found ways to do shape shifting. Very strange. Like these medicine men would say, if you take this root or this leaf or whatever, a plant, if you make a tea out of it or eat it or whatever, and on a certain day at a certain time, you would be able to change into something else. And Tosh said that he saw a medicine man turn from a human to a tiger to a snake and back to a man.
That was good weed.
Had to be, right?
Yeah. Oh, it might have been peyote. It might have been peyote.
Yeah, he was tripping balls, probably.
Yeah.
Well, he believed it, okay. And one thing he was also always interested in from the beginning of his recordings was the shit that was going on in South Africa, the apartheid, okay. And he had a song called Apartheid, all right. And his label EMI would be distributing records in South Africa, and he didn't like that. Okay, he didn't want to take any money from the people of South Africa. I mean, he knew. It's kind of funny when you think about it. It's like, well, maybe it would have been good if his music got there.
Yeah.
But I think that he probably realized that anybody, wasn't going to be able to pay for his records anyway. They didn't have the money, so he didn't want the record label making money off that as well. So he would spend a lot of time fighting with EMI on that to have them stop selling the records to South Africa. Um, he would do some shows at that time regarding apartheid, these anti-apartheid themed concerts. In '87, he would release his last solo album. Okay, so he took a couple of years off, but this album was called No Nuclear War, and it would be a big hit. There would be a title track. There would be a video with that. There was a song called "Nah Go a Jail." There was a song called "Fight Apartheid." A song called "Vampire," not to be confused with the Black Uru song "Vampire," but still a good song. And it was this that he would finally get some well-deserved recognition because he'd win a Grammy.
Yeah, that's what I say. He wants a Grammy. Like he won a Grammy for best reggae performance.
Right, right. Now, at that point, his career was primed for a big revival. Okay, but it was 1987, and this sadly would not happen. Uh, on September 11th, 1987, he had returned home to Jamaica, and he was there with his wife, and three men on motorcycles came to the house, invaded the house, and demanded money. Now, did you read about this?
Yeah, this is kind of sad what happened.
Yeah, yeah. He told them that he didn't have any money, and they would tie him up and torture him.
And this went on
And
for a few hours.
this went on for a few hours. And what they did too is like his wife was there, and they made her lie on the floor face down. And in the middle of all this, two friends show up. Okay, and it was a guy named Wilton Doc Brown, and a famous DJ named Jeff. His nickname was Free Eye, last name Dixon. All right. Now, you got to realize, too, Tosh knew the head gunman. Okay. The head gunman was a guy named Dennis Lepo Loban. All right. And he was a guy that had gotten out of prison, and he knew Tosh from when he was a kid. And Tosh, when this guy got out of jail, he gave him a bed, he gave him a place to stay, he gave him, I guess, some money, and he got him a job. He helped him out. So it's fucked up that this guy got help from Tosh, and here he is
Yeah,
trying
that's
to rob
crazy,
him.
man.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Now all these people, when Dixon and Brown showed up, they were all held hostage in the house. And the friends didn't have any money on them either. And Lobbin got mad, and he started firing the gun just randomly. And when he did that, he shot Tosh in the head twice. And actually, the wife, Marlene, got shot in the head too, but she lived, and she wasn't shot badly, but it was still shot in the head. And she actually played dead as the gunmen were leaving. She pretended to be dead.
Yeah,
The other
Dixon
guys
died.
had died as well.
Yeah.
Dixon and Brown. Yeah, he died also. Okay. Now, uh, there was also Dixon's wife Yvonne was there, and Tasha's drummer Carlton Davis, and another musician named Michael Robinson. They would all be wounded and survive, but they were there as well for this. Loban actually surrendered to the police, and the other two guys that were with him surrendered. Now, they were all interrogated, and Loban pleaded innocent. Now, in my research with this, it's unclear what happened to the other two guys. I think that they might have pleaded down, okay, because they never really, I don't think they ever went to jail. All right, but Loban pleaded innocent, and they would have a trial. It would be closed doors, okay, a closed doors trial, and he would be sentenced to death, which in those days in 87 in Jamaica, they still had
Yeah, I
the
was
death
reading that. They
penalty when
hanged
you
that
were hung.
motherfucker.
Right. Well, they didn't, because the sentence would be commuted in
Yep.
1995, and he's still in jail. So I don't think they have the death penalty anymore. But I got to talk to you about a movie, okay? That for everybody listening to the
Is
show,
this
if you
the
if you're
stepping
interested in Peter
razor?
Tosh, there's a real Step in Razor. It's called the Red X tapes, okay? And a couple of years after Tosh had passed away, um, they found these tapes, cassette tapes of him talking. And it's called the Red X tapes because he mentions in them how on every formal, like, document that he had, okay, there was always a red X where he was supposed to sign. Okay. Like anything, any kind of government document or whatever that he had. on his signature, there was always a red X next to where he was going to put his signature. And I think he took it as, it means something. Okay, like they have him marked.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So in this documentary, it's very good. It actually won a couple of awards in 1994. Um, it deals with the death and the murder, I should say, of Tosh. And it's interesting because there's somebody that spoke to Laban in jail, and he still swears his innocence. He says he knew nothing about it, that it wasn't him. Okay. The funny thing is the people that survived didn't know
Wow.
him. Okay. And it's unclear if during the whole interchange in the house, everything interaction in the house, it's unclear if Peter Tosh actually even acknowledged who he was. Okay, so there's some a part of this documentary kind of goes into a little bit of a conspiracy about the death. Okay, was it really Laban? Okay, that did it, or was he just a patsy? And did they want to kill Tosh? Did somebody want to kill Tosh? In the couple of years before he was murdered,
Wow.
he had premonitions of being killed. He felt somebody. There were people after him. He felt, but I'm not quite sure if he was involved with anything underhanded. There's no information about that. So I don't know who would be after him and why. But listen, when we did the Bob Marley uh,
Yeah.
show, and when he got shot, there's a lot of weird stuff about that. Was it the CIA? Was it the JLP from Jamaica trying to do it, or was it Manly's party trying to do it? The PNP.
Mike, you
Nobody
ever heard
knows,
the
but
thing
somebody
about the
tried to kill him.
M16
All right.
guitar?
Yeah, that was very cool.
Okay,
You
what can
see
you
it
tell
in
me
the
about
Step and
that?
Razor video. A fa- well,
Yeah.
a fan made it for him, I think. Okay, it was a M16 shaped rifle that was a guitar. Okay, and he made it for him. He gave it to him, and I think he played it on stage a little bit
Yeah, the
during a
name of the guy
tour,
was,
and it
I
got
think,
lost.
Bruno Kuhn. Went to the hotel in
Could be.
which
Sounds
Todd
right.
was
Bruno
staying,
something.
claimed
Yeah,
to have a gift for him. The gift was a built, yeah.
yeah, yeah. He gave him the guitar, and he had it, but then it got lost somehow during a tour, and it would show up years
Wow.
later in like an auction, I think, or something. Yeah, yeah. So somebody's
That's
got it.
incredible.
So that's all
Damn,
I got for you,
that
man,
was
on
a
Peter
very
Tosh.
that was a lot of history you gave us there. Like a few couple of years. He died pretty young, right? Was he 42 when he passed away?
I think he was
43.
about 43. Yeah, yeah. Still a young guy. He was definitely on the verge of coming back a little bit after a few years of not releasing anything. He had a Grammy. I'm sure
Think
that he
about
would
if
have
he
been a
would
lot
have lived.
bigger
He
had he
would
lived.
probably been up there with Bob Marley.
Could be. Definitely by now, it's possible. It's a shame.
Yeah, because I
Yeah, he was a very
always heard
talented
that
guy,
people
good
were
songwriter.
pleading, and some people saying that the gun just went off. Also,
Yeah, I think the gunman was frustrated, angry, and the gun went off. I that's if you got an itchy trigger finger, man, that can happen with these
so
guns
Mike, what do we
sometimes.
have next for these good people next week?
What do we got? Oh, yes, we have Little Richard. Little
Yeah,
Richard, he
wow,
just passed away a couple
dude.
weeks ago.
That some people call that guy like the Godfather of
Yep,
rock
yep.
and roll. You know that? A lot of people
He
call
is.
him.
He absolutely is. He's yeah. I mean, fascinating career. We'll get into his early years in the 50s, and how he would give it all up to preach, and then come back and do music again, and then give it up again.
He was a character
He
too.
was a character, Little Richard. He was one of the originators of rock and roll, and it'll be cool to do a little show on him. People don't talk about him much anymore, but now that
Yep.
he passed away,
So
I definitely
so
want to do a
everybody,
show.
Mike, how can they reach you? And I think we're gonna have a page for the rock show soon, right?
Yeah, I hope by the time this show is up, we're going to have a page for the Rock Show on Facebook. There'll be more information on that as that happens. I'm going to put something together, and I want it to be like a little bit interactive. I'd like to do a song of the day and all that stuff, like I always do. But also, you know, we might talk a topic, and everybody that's part of the group, you can give me your opinions, give me ideas on shows, people you want me to talk about. Maybe I'll do that. We'll tie it in with the other
Mike,
shows.
let me
So
ask you a question.
I hope we
Wouldn't
can get
right now
something
be a
going.
great time for a whole brand new punk revival? Think about how it is right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
this would be a
Wow.
great time for like a real big people getting together, just bring back the punk scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, this pandemic is still on. The city's not opened yet. I'm
It
sure by
better
the time this
be.
show is up, it will be. I hope. Uh, but we have craziness going on. Okay, not only do we have the pandemic, we have this problem with
Yeah.
the cop that shot the guy in Minneapolis. Uh, tonight, they arrested a bunch of people in Union Square. There's a lot of angst out there, and in the '70s there was a lot of angst. So yeah, it would be kind of prime another real punk scene. But where
Who
would
the
they
hell
play?
know with
Some
the
of these
way they
clubs may never
going?
reopen.
Do you know? Put some money together, man. We open a new fucking venue. Who the hell knows?
Well, you know something? I heard that a bunch of clubs nationally, I don't know which ones specifically, but they've gotten together to lobby the federal government for bailout money because they think that like there will not be any venues anymore that
Hey,
can
look at the
reopen
Copa. The
after all this in
Copa's
some of these
going
states.
soon.
Yeah, right.
And think about how many venues we
It's a
had
shame.
out there. You can really go see people play. That was dying out also.
There's, there's a lack of it now. There's a lack of it, before all this happened. I don't know, man. I mean, there's gonna have to be. I mean, there'll be fucking house parties.
Yeah.
Black flag. Playing house parties.
Oh man. So Mike, how can people reach you? Oh, and I gotta tell you, you did a great job on that groupie review. So if you listen to the show, look up Mike Baker, and he did a great review on the groupies, and I think we're gonna probably have that on the page, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'll do some record reviews when we get this page up. I'll try to do at least one a week, if not more. Uh, when I get a lot of new music, and I get stuff mailed to me, and when I get stuff, we'll talk about it. The Groupies was a good one. There was not a lot known about this band, and they just came out with a live album from I think it's from 1967, 68. The Groupies were a New
Yeah.
York City band from the mid 60s that were very popular, but never had released anything. Only one single, a song called "Primitive," and this
So
collection's
you
fantastic.
recommend the album? Yeah,
So
right?
that was a good. Absolutely, yeah. It's just called "The Groupies," "Primitive," and you can get it on I believe
I
green
wonder if I
vinyl
could find
or
that
CD.
on Apple. Yeah,
Probably
because
by
I
now
either
it's out,
me
so they
either
probably got it.
Spotify or Apple. I'm like connected to those things. That's where I get all my music. Yeah, and
Yeah, yeah,
once we get the
that's cool.
site up for the page, I'll probably do some review on some modern music. Probably bring a little, do some hip hop and shit on there.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be a few other, I'll get into some. I'll do a little reggae stuff. There'll be,
Yeah,
a
because
whole
if
bunch of shit.
anybody know
It's not
me,
just
we're
going to be
very
rock.
diversified in music. We listen to all kind of fucking music, everywhere. Like
Yeah, we're all over the
yeah.
fucking place. As long as it's
So,
cool.
Rocker Mike, how can they get a hold of you?
Okay, I'm on Instagram, Rocker Mike 212. I'm on Twitter, Rocker Mike 3, and Facebook under Michael Baker. And hopefully, we'll have a new page up soon, and we'll give you the
Wow.
info about that.
I am all over the place.
Where can
I'm
we
on
find you, Mr.
Instagram,
Rossi?
Facebook, YouTube, and pretty much all over social media. Just look me up, and I'm all over the place in social media, and
Yeah,
I'm getting lumped up. Everything's
under
lumped
Getting
up,
Lumped
and
Up.
pretty much pretty soon, hopefully, we'll do a show with the two of us in the same place together.
Yeah, I think that's going to be soon. We got a show, like I said, on Little Richard coming up. A show on the Pretty Things. A few other making of the first Doors album. That'll be big. We're doing a show on the goth band Bauhaus. So a lot of different
Yep,
shit coming up. One of
definitely.
those will be
But
video,
Mike,
I'm
thank you
sure.
for your information and everything we got. And I'll see you next week for another episode of the Rock Show. And remember, don't get drunk, get
Yep.
up. See you soon.
Don't get drunk. Get lumped up.